So, this weekend, the Department of Justice was supposed to release the full Epstein files to Congress on Friday, but they didn't do that. But instead, they've released about 500 pages. It's like a fucking Harry Potter book's worth of this 2-day-long interview with Ghislaine Maxwell that was conducted, as we can see from this is page 1 of day 1. So far, just to tell you guys, I haven't even had time to look at day 2. It's taken me every spare minute of time I've had up until literally the second this video started to get through day 1. So if there's something in day 2 that contradicts anything that I'm saying tonight, I'll find out on the stream I do about day 2. But for now, all I can say is I've read through day 1. It was like 250 pages or something, 263 pages. And some of that's index, but Anyway, so I just wanted to go through it. It is really nuts. It's really nuts. It is basically like a Joe Rogan interview because it's a very friendly interview. Todd Blanche is mostly the guy who's interviewing her. He's very nice to her. He's kind of like has like this Joe Rogan kind of esque thing where he just sort of agrees with whatever his guest is saying. He doesn't try to argue. He doesn't try to, fight back in any way. Maybe we should talk about who this guy is. So for the most part, the only two people who really talk in this interview are Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General. So I believe that means he's like just below Pam Bondi in the hierarchy of the administration right now. But who is this guy? Who the heck is this dude? Who is Todd Blanche? Donald Trump's lawyer in his Stormy Daniels hush money trial. So this guy used to be Donald Trump's personal lawyer. He was like a defense lawyer, not a prosecutor, not a guy who would be like, okay, here is one of the world's most horrifying criminals, and what questions should I ask them to really find out more about their guilt? No. He's not that type of lawyer. He's the type of lawyer that's like, hey, pay me a lot of money and I will do what I can to get you out of a real scrape and a jam. That's kind of his vibe. Great picture of him right there, by the way. Looks like he's whistling or something. So he's the main guy. Then we got these people here. They don't really talk much, but people from the FBI, the acting associate deputy attorney general, this guy, the deputy U.S. marshal, I don't know. Aren't those the guys that go on planes? He's there. These guys don't really talk too much. I think Diego Pestana says like one line at one point, but it's a good line. And then Ghislaine Maxwell, definitely the other person who talks a lot in this interview. And she's got 3 of her lawyers here. This is her counsel, David Marcus, Leah Safian, and Melissa Madrigal. And they don't talk much, but they do talk sometimes, and it's quite interesting to note the parts that they talk at. So we'll see some of that. So yeah, Todd Blanche, he's like the main man behind all this. He posted the links on Twitter. This is where I found it. In the interest of transparency, the Justice Department is releasing the complete transcript and audio of my proffer of Ms. Maxwell. The transcript and audio are linked below. And also like, what is a proffer? Because I'm not a legal expert, but I looked up what a proffer was, and it's an offer. It's like, why don't you just call it an offer? Is it like a preemptive offer or something? Like, what's a proffer? I guess it's like a legal term, but like, why are we offering Ghislaine Maxwell anything? Like, what? Why would we do that? Keep these names in mind: David Marcus, Leah Safian, and Melissa Madrigal. So this is day 1. I thought this part was interesting. This is like from the beginning, early before the interview really starts. Todd Blanche says, "Whatever you talk about today, you have what's called immunity. So that means the words you say today we cannot use against you in a case in chief if we were ever to bring one." Okay, Ghislaine, thank you. Todd Blanche. All right, there's exceptions to that. The most meaningful one of which is that if you say something today that's not true, that's a lie, we can bring a prosecution against you for what's called false statements. Okay, Ghislaine Maxwell came over it's from the UK in 1990, over to New York to help look at some stuff for her father. If you're not familiar with Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, he was like a big deal in the UK, in England, and he ran like a bunch of newspapers, the Sunday Mirror, I think it's called, or the Daily Mirror, or some kind of a mirror. Around this time, where Ghislaine had to move to America, he was caught, embezzling money from his employees' retirement funds. Like, just a brutally evil thing to do. And he lived a lavish lifestyle. He was like a billionaire. He was a real, it is kind of crazy how similar Robert Maxwell is to Donald Trump. They were kind of similar sort of people. And I think also it would be fair to compare him to Jeffrey Epstein in a lot of ways. After this enormous scandal, and people in the UK were furious that this guy had done this thing. And all of these people who worked for this company had lost their inheritance. Really intense. Ghislaine moved to America because she was like, oh shit, it's getting a little awkward over here with my dad's massive scandal and like trial and everything. He ended up dying in a very mysterious way about a year later. But so she moved over. So first she moved to the US, and this was before anything. And she'd come, one of the things she was doing was working on the New York Daily News, I guess. This is one of the things that Ghislaine Maxwell was working on. This is another newspaper owned by her father, Robert Maxwell. And in fact, I may have met Donald Trump at that time because my father was friendly with him and liked him very much. And I think should be said that he also very much liked Ivana because she was also from Czechoslovakia, where my dad was from. So, okay, I'll just say right off the top here, there is so much bullshit in this interview, so much just obviously insane lies, especially about Trump that we'll see Ghislaine do. But this part actually rings pretty true to me. Like, that makes sense. Robert Maxwell was from Czechoslovakia. Ghislaine didn't get that part wrong. People used to call him the bouncing Czech. Pretty funny little pun there. Kind of mean, but yeah. The bouncing Czech. Anyway, and Trump's first wife, Ivana Trump, was also Czechoslovakian. Also, I just think those two guys would get along no matter what. So I don't remember if I did meet him in 1990 with my dad, but I knew that's how I knew about Mr. Trump. And also, like, New York Daily News is like a tabloid, right? And Trump was like a tabloid guy back in these days, constantly in the tabloids. And this was before Ghislaine Maxwell met Jeffrey Epstein. All right, so that's interesting. That helps us like set up a little timeline if what she's saying is true. Oh yeah, True Tech. I mean, this is like, yeah, all of these people got rich by scamming, like all of them. It's crazy. And like, what's even crazier is like the sinking feeling. The more you read about Epstein stuff, or honestly, like the more you read about a lot of different elites, corporate elites and stuff, is there another way to get rich? Maybe there is, maybe there's a few, but to get really rich, to get to the, 9 zeros club, like the 0.0001% rich, I don't think there's a way to do it without being an evil bastard. I actually don't think there is. Maybe I'm wrong. Prove me wrong. Rihanna? I feel like Rihanna's done some evil bastard shit, but I don't quite know. Okay, so this is according to Ghislaine, she met Jeffrey Epstein in 1991, and this lines up with what we sort of already thought and what the research has been done here. And she met Epstein at his offices on Madison Garden. And I think the most memorable thing I can think about is that he was wearing a tie, which he didn't often do. It's like, that is weird. That is weird for Epstein, who's like kind of a slob, always in like the same track pants, jeans. He wore jeans to the wedding of Donald Trump and Marla Maples. He did not like to dress up, but he was wearing a tie the first time he met Ghislaine. And then she goes, it had a giant, seemed like a ketchup stain on it. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah. That's the Epstein that we know. That was how we met. He invited me to come and have tea. And I was like, tea, that's English. Okay. But what was unusual was in his offices, I found it very engaging, and that was that. Okay. That's the meet cute of Epstein and Ghislaine. So here's Todd Blanche. Like, obviously this guy is a piece of shit who's really doing, the entire purpose of this is to exonerate Trump and to make people less suspicious of Trump. I don't think mission was really accomplished there, but I don't know, maybe. He does ask some interesting questions. I'll give him that. And that'll probably be the nicest thing to say about Todd Blanche, because I got a lot of problems with how he conducts this interview, but I like that he asks this. And while we're with respect to your father, there have been multiple questions about whether he worked for any intelligence agency. Do you have any knowledge about that? Ghislaine Maxwell. I think, well, certainly my father had a background in intelligence during the Second World War. He was a British intelligence officer. I think that once you've been an intelligence officer, you're kind of always. It doesn't mean that you're formally employed. Interesting. So I don't think my dad in any formal sense was, employed by any agency. But when you're a very significant businessman and politician, as my father was, you meet with people over time and you, I guess, trade business or ideas. I think if that would fall under that definition, that's how I would give it. So there are some sus things about Robert Maxwell. A lot of people talk about him as he was like proven to be connected to Mossad or proven to be connected to Russian intelligence. And there certainly are, like, I think 2 or 3 scandals involving the Mirror and some of the people who worked for the Mirror that may have been directed by him. Some, things he said, some whatever. We don't have any I don't think we have any like smoking gun evidence, but I mean, one of the big things is around his death. He was like picked up and carried to Israel and buried in Israel like right away. And Ghislaine herself went on his boat, which is called the Lady Ghislaine, and shredded all of his documents immediately. Like as soon as he died, there was the idea that he had asked, he was in a rough situation, right? He owed a lot of people a lot of money that he didn't have. And he was perhaps threatening some intelligence agency, maybe Mossad. He was like, hey, if you don't give me a lot of money, I'm going to go public with all the stuff I know. And then he died by falling off of his boat. And, his body it was like, oh, it doesn't seem like was there a struggle? Like, why would he die in this way? Like something about his body was weird. So it's an interesting question, and it's kind of an interesting answer here. Yes. So this is interesting because this is a lot of the deep conspiracy theories around Epstein. A lot of people think that Epstein just took over what Robert Maxwell was doing. Robert Maxwell was doing all this evil shit for Israeli Mossad, and Robert Maxwell was the one who introduced Epstein to Ghislaine, and like blah blah blah. There's so much speculation on that. There's no evidence for it. I don't think. Todd Blanche asks her about this. Did your father and Mr. Epstein have a business relationship over the years? Ghislaine Maxwell, they never met. They never even met. Or they never met? I know they never met. Well, how do you know they never met? I just categorically know they never met. Well, because after 1991, before my father died, he asked me if I'd met anybody interesting or whatever, because I was still trying not to get sucked back into the family business. So Ghislaine goes on here. I won't read the whole thing. It's like a few pages long, but she says like, right before my father died in a mysterious way, he asked me if I'd met anybody special. And I was like, yeah, I met this cute guy. His name's Jeffrey Epstein. This dude, he was friends with Ace Greenberg, who was the guy that got, Epstein his job at Bear Stearns when he used to work at Dalton. If a lot of these words are flying over your head, don't worry about it. It's not that important. But he contacted Greenberg and Kane from Bear Stearns, Epstein's first kind of financial job. And he was like, is this guy chill? Is it okay for him to be dating my daughter? And they both said yes. Even though apparently, and this is all according to Ghislaine, so this maybe none of this is true. They told him he was cool, even though they did fire him for doing some unethical thing. So very, very odd. Now, this is not what everybody sort of thinks. Washington Post article from 2020. This is, I guess, came out right after President Trump wished Ghislaine Maxwell well. Crazy to think about that. And there's a part in here, a quote from Steve Hoffenberg, a Trump acquaintance who was a one-time business partner of Epstein. That's a nice way of putting it here. I probably don't need to introduce every single person here, but Hoffenberg is a very interesting guy. He and Epstein ran Towers Financial, which was up until Bernie Madoff, the largest Ponzi scheme in U.S. history. Epstein escaped that scandal unscathed. Hoffenberg spent decades in prison. According to Hoffenberg, it was Robert Maxwell who first introduced his daughter to Epstein in the late 1980s. So that doesn't make sense with what Ghislaine is saying. But then again, Hoffenberg is not exactly a very trustworthy source. However, never fear. We also have, now this is from the makers of a Canadian documentary about Ghislaine Maxwell called Epstein's Shadow, made by Bell Media. It's also available on Peacock, Epstein's Shadow. They wrote this, I don't know, I don't quite know what this website is. Is this like shitty Substack or something? So this is another quote from Hoffenberg. Same thing. Jeffrey Epstein presented himself to Ghislaine Maxwell. Robert Maxwell jointly as a Wall Street investment banker. Yes, there was another name here I should mention here. A former agent in Israeli military intelligence, aka Mossad, I believe. Ari Ben Menash, who was, according to these guys, Robert Maxwell's supervisor, or in layman's terms, a handler. And now, according to Ari Ben Menashi, not sure how to say it, Epstein needed a job and Maxwell provided it. And then Epstein brought Ghislaine into the mix of his work with her father. Jeffrey Epstein sort of took her in and recruited her. She wasn't supposed to be working. She was supposed to be his girlfriend. Why does this thing keep popping up? That's so annoying. But then she got into it. The it to which Ben Menashi, Robert Maxwell's Israeli espionage handler, refers to is nothing less than international blackmail. So, you can see this is more of the hard conspiracy theory stuff. And I've never, to be totally honest with you guys, I've never found that theory, that whole thing, very convincing. Like, who would I trust even less than Hoffenberg? Probably a fucking Israeli intelligence agent. What Ghislaine is saying here is interesting because it's like, it contradicts what other people have said. And shout out to Adam Cochran on Twitter who found those quotes. There's a part where Ghislaine talks about sleeping with Jeffrey Epstein the first time. I'll spare you that. Ghislaine Maxwell found, so she was working for, according to Ghislaine, she was working for Jeffrey Epstein as like his like home decorator and like assistant. And she was looking for a house for her father before he died. And she had found a former Iranian embassy. When her father died, Jeffrey Epstein was like, I'm looking for a new place in New York. You got anything? And she had the former Iranian embassy. And she was like, you can't afford it. She goes, and I just want to go back to, I found a house for him to rent in New York because he'd asked me, I've been looking at one for my father and I found one which was a former Iranian embassy. I think it belonged to the Iranians or the Iraqis or someone. And I didn't know that he had any money, talking about Epstein. It was like, I want to say it was $12,000 a month, which to me seemed like a fortune for this, for the Iranian embassy. $12,000 a month? That seems like nothing at all. Like, this is the 90s. And I said to myself, I found this house, but I don't think you can afford it. He was like, that's ridiculous. Of course I can afford it. And he rented it, which is interesting. From what I've read about Epstein and Ghislaine, how they first met each other, I think Vicky Ward has done some work in this area. When they first started dating, Epstein was pretending to be rich, but he lived in kind of a shitty apartment. So it makes sense maybe that Ghislaine wouldn't be aware that he'd be able to afford something like this. So this is maybe, if this is true, this is maybe like the start of Epstein's kind of weird financial stuff. You know what I'm saying? So Jeffrey Epstein lived there until 1996, got a house in Ohio. So here's the beginning, I think, of Ghislaine trying to rewrite history a little bit. Basically, her pitch, this interview, is to say that, hey, I didn't even know Epstein was doing anything weird. I didn't know any of that. All I was I just decorated his houses for him. I helped him out a little bit, but we weren't like friends or whatever, which is like crazy. So Todd Blanche is like, so you were with Epstein pretty regularly. Ghislaine's like, well, no. So I was never with him regularly. That's one of those misnomers. I don't think that's what a misnomer is. Isn't a misnomer like you're using the wrong, or something is named incorrectly or something like that? I mean, at the beginning I did see more of him, but I worked in his office. So I would go to his office and I would see him, and I would count in my head when I would see him. I would count that would be a day that I would see him. But I never ever stayed with him. All right. So she's like trying to be like, hey, listen, like we had sex one time and then a couple other times, but it was like, we weren't really dating. We weren't really like anything special. I didn't really hang out with him that much. I was like an employee. And so she starts talking about Ava Anderson, who is a major part of Epstein's story. Ava Anderson was a former Miss Sweden. She was like, I don't know, Miss Universe or something, Miss World or whatever. And she was Epstein's girlfriend. And she was also like some kind of a scientist. She's like had some kind of like rocket science degree or something like that. She's like really smart and really beautiful Swedish lady. So Epstein dated her and he was like really into her. So she's saying like, yeah, his actual friend Ava Anderson, who Epstein was dating before he apparently started dating Ghislaine, and then they broke up around 1994. And so Ghislaine's girlfriend, who was the one who hooked up with Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine's girlfriend had told her they weren't together, and then Epstein said, "Oh, we're not together," but that wasn't true. In fact, I know it's not true. So they were still together up until I think 94, when at some point in that period of time, Ava met Glenn Dubin, and they got married in, I think, 1994. And that is true. I have a New York Post article here. This is also a completely fucked up part of the Jeffrey Epstein saga. Here's Ava and Glenn Dubin, Glenn in the middle. On the right is Chelina Dubin, who was Epstein's goddaughter. Ava Dubin had been 20 when she met Epstein in about 1981, and their 11 years together made her his longest time girlfriend. They split before the former beauty queen married hedge funder Glenn Dubin in 1994. So that seems quick, right? That seems like a quick amount of time to go from dating Jeffrey Epstein to marrying Glenn Dubin. But Glenn Dubin, if you'll remember from my other stream I did about the Epstein client list, according to Joe Goblin, Glenn Dubin was accused of sexual assault by Virginia Giuffre and seems to be someone who was a client of Epstein's in that way. This article is about another really fucked up thing where their daughter, Chelina Dubin, always called Jeffrey Epstein Uncle Jeff. Epstein talked all the time about how, oh, this is my favorite person in the world, my ex-girlfriend's daughter, Chelina Dubin. He had talked about wanting to marry her so that he could give her like his inheritance. And they just were cool with that, I guess. I don't know. It's so weird, the relationship between these two parents and Jeffrey Epstein. I won't blame the daughter too much since she was just a kid or whatever, but like some fucked up stuff. I mean, I don't know. I don't know even what to think about that. Here's Ghislaine Maxwell again, like trying to spin her bullshit here. She's trying to say, and so also I know now, which I didn't know at the time, was that Epstein saw lots of other women, and I know that now, because I can see it from the flight logs, and I know it now because I can see from the emails. And it's like, wait, you're saying you didn't know Epstein was cheating on you? What are you talking about? I absolutely did not know. So she's trying to say all kinds of things here. She didn't know how many women Epstein was seeing while they were together. Apparently, when they started out, Ghislaine's salary was $25,000 a year, which I find dubious. Ghislaine says by 1999, their relationship had foundered. They'd stopped having sex. Not really fun to read, so I'll just skip over that. But I thought this part was kind of funny. Ghislaine Maxwell knew it was over after 9/11 because they didn't talk. I definitely knew it was over after 9/11 because we were both in New York, and I don't know, were you in New York on 9/11? I mean, 9/11. It was a scary time if you were in New York. You didn't know. I didn't know. Nobody knew what was going on. And he was in 71st Street, and I was in 65th Street, my house, and he wouldn't see me at all. Asked me, his mom, who I'm very close to, who was in the hospital, and still just asked me to look after her. And then I knew, as anyone did at that time, if you're not going to be there for someone in 9/11, you're never going to be there. Anyway, how's my accent? I feel like I slip in and out of having a passable British accent. Any dang ways. So, and this sort of lines up, though, with what we know about Ghislaine Maxwell. So we know that Ghislaine and Epstein were very close throughout the 90s. And towards the early 2000s, around the time that she started, they both started hanging out with Bill Clinton, but especially Ghislaine. It seems like she had one foot out the door. So that would line up with this. She met, apparently, Ted Waite in 2003. This is another billionaire. I don't think I screen capped it, but there's one part in the interview where she says, oh, Ted Waite is way richer than Epstein, by the way. He has so much more money than Epstein. Like, not even close. Which is kind of funny. What kind of billionaire was he again? American billionaire, businessman, and philanthropist who co-founded Gateway Inc. Gateway Inc., what is that, like a computer program thing? Personal computers, computer monitors, servers, and computer accessories. Okay. So after that, she started hanging out with the Gateway guy. It's so weird because Ghislaine is like very likable. Like everyone who meets Ghislaine is like, I like Ghislaine. Even people who are like, fuck Jeffrey Epstein, they like Ghislaine. And so she could probably date anyone she wanted. So why was she dating Epstein for so long? It just doesn't make any sense. Why would she do that? You know? I don't know. Here's a funny thing I just noticed. Todd Blanche, the guy who's doing most of the interviewing, he keeps accidentally calling Epstein Mr. Maxwell. In the thing, it's got like the sick in brackets. He's like, your relationship with Mr. Maxwell, professional and other, changes in 2003. Like, he's like, it's just very funny to me. Oh, Secret Agent Dan, 100% daddy issues is a big part of it. A big part of it, I would imagine, why she was dating Epstein. Like I said, like Epstein and Robert Maxwell are pretty similar guys, I think, in a lot of ways. And not a bad point either, honestly, because she was broke. Yeah, that could definitely have been the case. He was able to like date her and give her a job. Yeah, more like an avalanche. Yeah, very awkward. And then she doesn't even comment on it. She just like keeps going with it. But this is not the only time he does it. He does it like several times in this interview. He calls Epstein Mr. Maxwell. Just a little weird. So the first time you started dating your father, I mean your Mr. Maxwell, I mean Jeffrey Epstein. So this part, I believe this is a lie from Ghislaine, unless I'm mistaken here. So he's asking about the investigation into Epstein's first arrest. So this is like 2006, 2007, 2009. This investigation was kind of ongoing. And Todd goes, well, were you part of that investigation? Absolutely not. Did law enforcement ever talk to you about that as a part of that? No. Did you the feds never talked to you? No. The FBI never talked to you? No. Do you know? I never even received a phone call. So you didn't receive a subpoena? No. Did state law enforcement ever reach out to you? No. And so I looked into Bradley Edwards' book, the lawyer for the victims of Epstein, one of the lawyers for the victims of Epstein, who was looking into this. I began seeking, this is a quote from his book, Relentless Pursuit. I began seeking information in summer 2009 from many of Epstein's one-time reportedly close friends, including Donald Trump, David Copperfield, the magician, Leslie Wexner, owner of Victoria's Secret and Limited, among other enterprises, modeling agent Jean-Luc Prunel, hedge fund mogul Glenn Dubin, Bill Clinton, and director-producer Paula Heil Fisher, as well as Epstein's assistant Sarah Kellen and his girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell. He goes further to say that she kept dodging him. She kept oh, I can't do this. I can't do that. Oh, sorry, I can't come to this deposition. I can't do it. One time she was like, I can't come to this deposition because I'm going to be out of the country. And then it turned out that oh shit, the day that she said she was going to be out of the country, that was the day she was at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. And Bradley Edwards found out about that from like seeing the photos of the wedding in People magazine. I want to say to WBG 123098, I'm not. She is extremely difficult to believe. The issue is there's so many fucking people in this case who just are compulsive liars or are like motivated to lie or are just like profoundly evil people, including Ghislaine. But the problem is these are the people who know the most about it. Like if you know all of Epstein's secrets, you are not a trustworthy person. This is a problem in just like getting to the bottom of any conspiracy or any like even like organized crime, which is also a type of conspiracy, like mafia shit. Like in order to find out what is actually going on behind the doors in like large scale criminal enterprises, we do have to rely on the word of criminals. Like right now, we have all this shit from like fucking Steve Hoffenberg and all these like this Mossad guys and like whatever, like all these people who are untrustworthy. But like, I'm not saying like she's telling the truth here. In fact, I want to point out times where I'm certain that she's not telling the truth, but she does know this stuff, right? Like somewhere in her brain, she has information that we don't have that we've never heard before. It's very difficult to trust what she's saying, but I do think that there are things to be learned from this interview. You know, I'm if you guys think I'm being too, what's the word, credulous, let me know. But, and 100% Bob Matthews. Yes, Les Wexner should 100% be investigated. That guy, I think that guy also knows a lot. But yeah, they ended up finally subpoenaing Ghislaine by cornering her outside of a Clinton like foundation event that they knew she was speaking at. She kept dodging them. This is apparently, so she's like, again, she's this whole thing. She's like, I was just the decorator. So she had already kind of apparently stopped hanging out with Epstein in the 2000s, which, like I said, that does line up with what we already sort of knew or what we thought, at least as far as my understanding of the timeline. And she, at one point, in 2005, she went to look at swatches, colors like paint, I guess, swatches for Jeffrey Epstein in Palm Beach. And when she got there, the police were at his house. And the houseman tipped her off. So yeah, she found out that the police were like raiding Epstein's house and blah, blah, blah. This is her quote here. Oh, I didn't understand. I didn't have a context for that. I didn't even know. I'm not even sure what I thought. I was like, that's weird. I just thought that was funny. That's weird. Seeing the police raid her pedophile boyfriend's house that has cameras in it, that she would recruit high school girls to be masseuses there. That's weird. Epstein told her not to worry. So apparently Ghislaine continued to be paid by Epstein from 1991 until 2008 or 9. And by the end, at the beginning, if you'll recall, she said she was getting paid $25,000 a year. But by the end, her salary was $250,000 a year. She got $250,000 a year for doing nothing up until the point that Epstein got out of jail. And after prison, Ghislaine had almost no relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And again, this does seem to be true. This is what without having read this is what I would have said. After Epstein got out of prison, I don't think he and Ghislaine ever hung out or talked. But I mean, she says that it's almost non-existent. But she said there are some exceptions here. I just moved on. I just didn't want to have anything to do. I didn't want the drama. I didn't want to be associated with ... You know, that whole thing. I think I didn't screenshot it, but I think she also says sometimes we'd see each other at events and they were like friendly to each other, but they didn't like hang out or whatever. So Ghislaine would reach out to Jeffrey Epstein whenever any legal drama happened. So that would probably be quite often. I always called him to try and find out what was going on. Okay. And I did email him at that time for those types of details. It was like, what do I do? What? I mean, I was like, and then when he's charged in New York federally, yes. How'd you learn about that case? In the press. Crazy. This part is insane. She says, I wasn't in an indictment. I was blah, blah, blah. I had never, up until when my lawyer said, I had no knowledge of lawyers being interested in me, as in like lawyers looking into the Epstein case. Ghislaine says, I had no knowledge of them being interested in me, honestly, until he had died. So apparently, Ghislaine Maxwell, from the time she left Epstein's employ around 2007 to like through the trial, through her own trial with a defamation lawsuit with Virginia Giuffre, all the way through 2019, Epstein gets arrested. Epstein goes to jail. Epstein's in jail for a month. The news is going crazy about it. Everybody's looking into it. She had no idea that any lawyer was interested in talking to her until he died. What? That is crazy. Yeah, didn't he work his way back into New York high society after the 13-month jail stint with Maxwell's help. I remember several celebrities having invited him to parties. He became normalized, but no Maxwell. So he did, like, there was a very deliberate, what's the word, like PR cleanup campaign. I forget exactly what you call that. Maybe I'll devote an entire stream to that, because that is really interesting time in his life. Like, why would anyone hang out with him after this time? But a lot of people did. A lot of it was he started hanging out with academics more and donating money to Harvard and showing up to these academics parties and partying with like Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz maybe was what got him in the door, because he was already good friends with the Dersh. And, he's hanging out with, who are all these people? Steven Pinker. What's the guy's name? Stephen Hawking. Yeah, image rehabilitation campaign. Exactly. There's you can see this website that got started up that was clearly trying to change the SEO, searching Jeffrey Epstein's name, and image washing campaign. Yeah. But at that point, Ghislaine was not really around, as far as I know. That's my understanding. Exactly. What's up, nerds? And like Epstein, for a guy who always loved to talk about how smart he was and what a genius he was and really good at math and blah blah blah, he would apparently like he'd host these what he called salons at his house, where he'd bring all these like academics over and like whatever, what the heck's that guy's name? Lawrence Krauss and, all these like geniuses. He'd be talking to them, and then whenever he lost interest in what they were saying, he'd be like, and what has that got to do with pussy? But no, I mean, as far as I know, Ghislaine was not involved at that point. Bill Gates also, his relationship with Bill Gates was during that time. Anyway. But yeah, no, good question. But this is just to be clear, this is complete bullshit. I had no idea any lawyers were interested in me, says Ghislaine Maxwell, until like August 2019 when Epstein had died. That's insane. No, she was like already on the run. Chomsky as well. Yeah. Unfortunately, Chomsky was hanging out with Epstein too. Stephen Hawking. Hawkins. I don't know who that is, but Stephen Hawking went to Jeffrey Epstein's island, and Epstein built him a custom submarine so that he could go and see the fish and stuff. Okay, come on now. E equals minor child squared. Come on now. Oh boy, we like to have fun around here. And I wrote in my notes, fucking Blanche doesn't challenge her on anything. It really is like a Joe Rogan episode. She's like, I didn't even know people wanted to talk to me until after Epstein died. And Blanche is like, yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, moving on. Ghislaine talks about Epstein's money. He invented a new type of... So this is interesting, because where the fuck did Epstein get his money? So this is what Ghislaine says. I can tell you what he told me. Tell Blanche, yes. So I know what he was hired from working at a private school whose name eludes me at this point. And this is one of her lawyers, Leah Safian, Dalton, Ghislaine Maxwell, Dalton. He was working at Dalton. He was a math teacher. And he met, I think it was Ace. That's Ace Greenberg from Bear Stearns. I'm not sure. He met someone from Bear who hired him because he was very good at math. And believe it, that he then worked on creating a trading of, oh my gosh. Just describe it. It's okay. Go ahead. He came up with some new type of trading system. Not a system so much, but as vehicle. A trading vehicle, you see. Okay. What? That doesn't make sense. I'm just escaping right now. And this is while he was working at Bear Stearns. It's like, I'm just escaping right now. What does that mean? I feel like we should be alarmed at this. Ghislaine Maxwell, in her interview, says that she is escaping right now. We should be alarmed that she's now at a minimum security prison, and she says she's escaping right now. I don't know what to do about this. This seems bad. Anyway, and this is while he was working at Bear Stearns? At Bear Stearns, yes. Okay. And this is before you met him. Yeah, so this would be in the 80s, when he was working at Bear Stearns. This is what he told you. Yes. What you learned. Yes, this is what he told me. Okay. Himself. And then eventually he starts a financial firm. Do you know that to be true or no? J. Epstein and Company. You ever heard of that? Ghislaine Maxwell. I think it's, yes. So hang on a minute. This I did not know, but this I've subsequently learned, okay, is that he had some people or some issue at Bear Stearns, and there was some, I don't know, disagreement. He wasn't fired because obviously he was still very friendly with Ace and with Jimmy. At least, and those are, by the way, the two guys that she mentioned Robert Maxwell reached out to make sure, hey, is this guy on the up and up? Apparently he's dating my daughter. They're the guys that forced him out at Bear Stearns. And he spent the time I met him. But they were working with him, and he had money at Bear Stearns, and his clients' money. But, well, I'll come to that. But he told me himself that he'd started a business where he looked for stolen money. So this is what the line that he would tell people. This is what he claimed to do. So if somebody, let's see, I'm trying to think of some intelligent way to say it, but I can't think of anything. I've been with, not great, I'll give it to you. So this is she's just trying to explain what she's talking about. So let's say you have El Chapo. Oh God, I don't know where he comes from, but anyway, you've got El Chapo, and El Chapo's laundering money or still. He's working with the Sinaloa cartel, and he steals money from the Sinaloa cartel. He moves it to wherever. So he's got stolen money from the Sinaloa, goes to it. This didn't happen, by the way. I'm just type blanche. Yeah, I get it, Ghislaine. Just coming up with something in my head, and Sinaloa says to Epstein, "Can you track down my $1 billion that the other cartel stole from me?" And Epstein will go and find the $1 billion and will take a portion of the money that was stolen at a fee and give back the remainder. That would be on a percentage basis. And then she's like, "Oh, please, it's completely hypothetical." Blah 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 blah. Now this part annoys me. So if anyone in the chat knows this, because I know I've heard this before. I know I've heard this story before. I can't remember where. So here's how I think this started: is that he had a girlfriend. It was always always to the girls. I guess there was a girl whose name will come back to me, maybe not, whilst we're here, but I don't know. Maybe there's a woman. Just like getting well to make a point here. She was the daughter of a billionaire, and that billionaire, whatever his name was, he had some money stolen, and for some reason, this woman introduced Jeffrey. And Jeffrey, I think that's how this business started. That's what I remember. Now I have 100% heard that before. I have heard this story before. And I thought I'd read it in James Patterson's book, Filthy Rich, where this was before, what's it called? Not before Bear Stearns, but before he was with Ghislaine, before he was like doing definitely before he was with Wexner. He had a girlfriend who was the daughter of a billionaire or maybe, well, not a girlfriend, but some woman in his life who looked like Epstein's type. Some blonde, beautiful woman. And her father was a billionaire who had an issue with money, and Epstein helped him out with that. And it was just like she's describing. It had been stolen by someone. And this does, I think, if I could remember it, I would have looked it up, but I can't remember. But I have heard this story before. If anyone knows who this is about, please let me know. And yes, Miko, totally. I appreciate you letting us know. This woman was not underage. But, maybe it was Michael Wolff. Yeah, maybe that's where I heard it. From some Michael Wolff book about him. Yeah. Okay, I'll try to look into that because that is an interesting point that she is bringing this up. Michael Wolff, another guy who knows a lot about Epstein, who has, I think he said, over 100 hours of interviews with Epstein that he has not released, and also like a untrustworthy fucking bastard. So like everyone that we could possibly get knowledge from, you can't really trust. But that's interesting though that Ghislaine sort of corroborates this line. And this could all be one giant psyop, for sure. This could all be one giant psyop. This could all be a lie. If Epstein really was an intelligence agent, this could be part of his, fake backstory that they've created for him. But like, apparently this, I wish I could have tracked this down before the stream, but I would like to, I'd like to look it up. So you can even write in my notes, Filthy Rich has her name. And I was poring over Filthy Rich before we started the stream. Could not find it. Anyway, Todd Blanche goes, when you meet him and you're a part of his life in the early to mid 90s, what's he doing to make money that you see? Does he have clients? Does he have rich clients? Does he have famous clients? And if he does have clients, what services is he providing them? He does have, well, obviously there's one very famous client that everybody talks about, which is Les Wexner. It's a very important client to him. And I think it's probably helpful to describe what I would know to be true about what he managed for Les. And there's some bits that I'll be improvising. So she goes into it. She sort of explains what he was doing for the Limited that lines up with the shit that Epstein would tell people he was doing. I'll tell you guys, me personally, I am extremely skeptical about all of this fucking shit that Epstein was apparently doing for his billionaire clients, including Les Wexner. I don't think that Epstein was ever fucking like going through the fucking ledger, like opening up QuickBooks and like saving billionaires money or finding a way for them to avoid paying in taxes, especially not in the 90s when he spent all his time, abusing young girls and like flying everywhere on his private jet and like, hanging out with Donald Trump and Bill Clinton and going to modeling things. This guy would not have had, purely from like a time management perspective. Also, Epstein apparently had ADHD. That's canon. I just cannot believe that he was doing all this shit. I cannot believe that he was doing it. I think that is all a smokescreen. And what is a smokescreen for? I don't know. I don't think that Epstein was telling the truth about what he was doing for these clients. But the way Ghislaine Maxwell is describing it lines up with what Epstein said. So either she's also lying, though if I'm right, that is, either she's also lying or she's just repeating what Epstein told her and she genuinely does not know where Epstein's money came from. I tend to think she probably has a better, idea of it. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. You might have to become my official news source. Okay, thanks. No, it's not. It's good that we've got a British person and an English person, so that I can kind of go back and forth, and you can tell who's talking, right? So, but it's interesting though, right? It's interesting to see Todd Blanche say who were Epstein's clients. This is part of what she says he did for what's his name, Wexner. So let's say you had $1 billion to invest. So you would, in people's normal investment portfolios, you'd have some T bonds and this and that. But Epstein's strategies would be so much more sophisticated than that. I don't know what a T bond is. Not sure what the heck a T bond possibly could be, but okay. And so just say with Mr. Wexner, did Epstein get paid in percentages? Like there'd be a deal, he'd be paid. Did you understand it'd be a flat fee? Was he a business partner? How'd you understand it would be paid? Ghislaine says, I think it was more a la carte. So let's say this is a conversation. Epstein told me this. So all illustrated for me said that if I'd saved someone $5 billion, he'd take a flat percentage of that $5 billion. He wouldn't have $5 billion back. So like this is what he's saying. And if you're wondering what I think Epstein was doing here, my belief is I subscribe to the Epstein as a con artist strategy. I think that Epstein got the money that he had in the early 90s when he was with Ghislaine, and she was like, oh, how can you suddenly afford to buy the old Iranian embassy? Okay. I think that he got it from the Towers financial scam. I think that's where he got his original nest egg. And I think Epstein was, to me, and a lot of people disagree with this, but to me it makes sense that was just, at his core, he was a con artist. And he was very good at talking to very wealthy people and conning them out of their money, telling them what they wanted to hear. He was very good at appearing very smart and convincing people he was a math genius, convincing people he was like super good at math. That explains like how he got a job at Dalton School without even, having any degree, university degree or anything. He got a job teaching at a prestigious high school, teaching math. And then from there, he was able to convince Ace Greenberg that he was a genius enough to get hired at Bear Stearns. Like, this guy was very good at convincing people he was good with money. And maybe, I don't know, maybe he was slightly good with money, but I think it was mostly a scam. And then after that, I think what he would do is, tinfoil hat theory is, with people like Les Wexner, he would be like, hey, I'm a genius with money. Here is what I can do for you. Here is how I can save you like all of this money. And I'm going to do a bunch of illegal shit. I'm going to do a bunch of illegal shit and I'm going to make it so you don't pay any taxes. But don't worry, none of it will ever fall back on you. All you have to do is put your account in my name and then I will fix it. And if anything illegal gets caught, I'm the one that will go to prison because your account's in my name. And then he gets the account in his name and then he's like, actually, I'm scamming you. I'm going to like take all of your money. I think that's what I think, I don't know. This is a little bit crazy. This is a little bit of a crazy theory. This is just my personal opinion. I think that's what happened with Les Wexner. And I think he did that with a lot of other people too, including a couple that we'll meet moving forward here. But that's not what Ghislaine Maxwell says. That's what this other person says. So, a great question, Samuel TV. Why give him the New York mansion? You're talking about Les Wexner. Oddly enough, this is the part where we get into that. So on the next page, Todd Blanche says, did Mr. Wexner gift a property in New York to Mr. Epstein? Ghislaine Maxwell. So we're talking about 71st Street. So I don't know what the business deal was because, again, I'm not part of his business thing. But I think what happened would be that, let's say, Les owed him in, theoretically for his services, $100 million or whatever it was. He could have traded that against the property. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know a whole lot about money. I think that, like, there was some kind of a back and forth. I think that maybe Epstein had some leverage over Wexner, whether that was like blackmail material or just like, hey, I've got control of your money now. And if you don't want to look like a complete idiot, you're going to give me this fucking house. There's another person here who we will get into later, Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, who also seemed to think Epstein was a genius. She had talked to Clinton, one of the first people to talk to Clinton about Epstein in the 93 or something. She had talked to Clinton and said, oh, you have to you meet this guy, Jeffrey Epstein. He's going to talk to you about security, financial security, blah, 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 something amazing about, I forget exactly what it was she said. I should have put the link here, but my read on that is Epstein had worked his magic on her and told her exactly what she wanted to hear as a billionaire and been like, hey, like, I know exactly how to fix everything for the rich people and make it so you don't pay any money. Forrester was like, oh my God, I got to get him to talk to Clinton. We need to like fucking do this, blah, blah, blah. And whatever it was, like apparently he did other work for her. But then later, I think in the early 2000s, just like Les Wexner gave Epstein a free New York house, Lynn Forrester de Rothschild at that point gave Ghislaine Maxwell a New York mansion for like $1, I think it was. So it's just interesting. It's just interesting. Okay, this is funny. Todd goes, you know somebody named Stephen Hoffenberg? That's the guy from Towers Financial. Only from the press. Okay, so you don't know anything about whatever business relationship they may have had with Mr. Epstein? Mr. Epstein never spoke about him, never mentioned him. I only learned about that, whatever it is even. I don't even know what the truth is of that story from the press. I find that very funny because Hoffenberg was obsessed with Epstein. He kept a page on his Tower Financial's blog about Jeffrey Epstein. Just like a blog. I'll see if I can find it. Bibbidi-bibbidi-boo. Yeah, here it is. This is always funny. I think I've shared this on stream before, but I find this hilarious. Yeah. So this is from the towersinvestors.com/blog/Jeffrey Epstein. This is what Hoffenberg was doing. He would just, any news article he found about Jeffrey Epstein, especially like a negative one about Jeffrey Epstein, he just copy and paste its entire contents onto this page. And so while he was doing this, like this is like, early 2000s after the first lawsuit, Hoffenberg would have been one of the only people who was like actually following this stuff. Epstein was not a well-known guy at this point. Just copying everything, all this, look how much I'm scrolling. And I'm not even done. The whole time he was doing this, Ghislaine's like, no, never even talked about him. Hoffenberg? I only saw his name in the Netflix documentary. Never heard of him before that.
No.
I don't think Epstein even remembers who he is, It's like that, that Mad Men meme, or he's like, I don't think about you at all. But yeah, I just thought that was funny. Okay, this part's crazy. So Ghislaine, they're talking about Wexner, they're talking about whatever. Todd's like, how many clients like that did Mr. Epstein have? Ghislaine goes, well, why don't I just give you the names that I remember? And say it again. Why don't I just give you the names? Yeah. Do you want the names? Sure, go ahead. So go ahead. This is the Epstein client list from Ghislaine. So Ghislaine just starts listing names, and she actually has a little book. She's like, I brought a book. I wrote down some names of his clients. I wrote down a list of Epstein's clients. So here's what she says. She goes, Les Wexner, Leon Black, and she's not necessarily listing like Epstein's like sex trafficking clients. She's listing the clients to Epstein's like financial services scam. I think it's a scam. So Les Wexner, Leon Black, both of whom were on the Chill Goblin. Those were people who I put on my list, my opinion version of the Epstein client list. Elizabeth Johnson from Johnson & Johnson. I was not aware that they were connected at all. But apparently, Elizabeth Johnson also was one of his financial clients. Jess Staley, also on my list. Glenn Dubin, also on my list. And if you'll recall, was this guy who ended up marrying Eva Anderson like a month after she broke up with Epstein. And then she mentions
a woman in Ohio with the largest Klein painting. I think I'm going to get into that in a second. And Lynn Forrester de Rothschild. So Lynn Forrester has always denied. Epstein claimed that he had lent her $1 million when she came to him and she was like in broke or something. And she denied that. She's denied all of his connections with him. Another connection with Forrester de Rothschild. Her brother owns a airport terminal in Teterboro Airport in New York, New Jersey, that Epstein always flew into. I feel like Lynn Forrester may be another person who Epstein like ripped off because he certainly had apparently a lot of sway with her. And I just don't believe he was actually helping with her finances. Ghislaine Maxwell, she always gets weird. And I've seen her do this in other interviews too. Famously one where she's asked about, did you have a relationship with Doug Band? You have a relationship with Doug Band? She's like, well, I've never had sex with him. And so she's just doing that again here. I just thought that was weird. And she does it several times in this interview. Do you know whether he and Mr. Epstein had a relationship? Well, not a physical one. He's asking her about like, I don't know, Jess Staley or something like that. This part pissed me off so much. So Todd Blanche does this 3 times during the interview. I mean, he goes, so she's naming people. She keeps going through all this stuff. Wexner, Staley, Leon Black. Todd Blanche, Ghislaine goes, Glenn Dubin was a client. Who's that? This is how I know Todd Blanche he's not an Epstein. He's not got Epstein brain. This guy isn't familiar with like the lore here. Who's Glenn Dubin? Dude, anybody who has spent 20 seconds on the R. Epstein subreddit knows about Glenn Dubin. This guy's like a primary character in the Epstein saga. This guy's one of the people Virginia Giuffre accused. Does not know who he is. So she also talks about there's a billionaire woman from Ohio who's another client of Epstein who owns the largest Klein painting. And I did some reconnaissance, try to figure out who this was. I believe this is the largest painting by Yves Klein. I think that's who she's talking about. Large blue anthropomorphy. But I can't figure out who owns it. I think this is it. Then there's the one, but then it was easier to find the only female billionaire. This is from Forbes. Well, this is from Fox8.com, but apparently Forbes magazine listed 3 Ohioans. Denise York of Youngstown, who wait, is this right? 73? This woman is 73 years old? What? Jeez. Because I'd seen pictures of her. I didn't clock that she was 73. Oh my God. How much children's blood do you need to bathe in to look that young at 73? That's crazy. When is this photo from? Oh, 2000. Oh, okay. Still. All right. But that's who it was, Denise York. That's another one of the, shout out Ohio, probably one of the worst places to be a billionaire. Yeah, if you're a billionaire, why would you be in Ohio? Yeah, insane. But anyway, I don't know. Ghislaine's asked, what did Jeffrey Epstein do for Lynn Forrester de Rothschild? She says, I have no idea. I know he helped her financially. Her husband was the controller of New York. That sounds intimidating. I forget who her husband was when she was Lynn Forrester. She did have a husband previously, because now she's a Rothschild. She married, what's his name? Somebody de Rothschild. Now she's Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, but I don't know who the controller of New York is. Anyway, not really important. She's asked about whether he blackmailed men. Or I don't even think she's asked about that, but she just is like, I don't believe that he blackmailed. I'm not inside his business, but he would have this notion that he blackmailed men, or we don't really have to go there, that he wasn't a businessman and that everything he did was a fraud or a funk or what. I don't believe that to be true. So that's more what I think he was doing, but she says that's not true. So Todd Blanche goes, why do you say you don't believe it to be true? Well, what do you mean? Show me why you think that. Okay, why do you say that? Well, let me rephrase that. If there was fraud, I never saw it. What I saw, what I felt, I ran that office. I mean, ran. I was responsible. Anyway, she goes on, she changes the topic there. This part pissed me off. Page 74, line 22. David Marcus, one of her lawyers, interrupts, did you ever see him blackmail a friend or an acquaintance? Never. And Todd Blanche. So this is, by the way, this is in the middle of Ghislaine is listing people. She's giving us her list. She's giving us her list of people here. Les Wexner, Leon Black, Elizabeth Johnson, Jess Daly, Glenn Dewey, Women in Ohio, Lynn Forrester de Rothschild. And then Todd fucking Blanche completely shifts the topic. Oh, why don't we talk about blackmail? We can talk about, we can talk about that. We can talk about that now. I'm like, dude, she's still listing names. Like, let her talk, man. So then they get on the blackmail thing, and she implicates nobody, right? Doesn't she clear Epstein of any wrongdoing also? She doesn't point to anyone in all this? She does implicate somebody. She does, in fact, implicate somebody. I'll get to that in a minute. It's not fun. But for a while, she gets off of talking about the names and she has a fucking book. And it's just so fucking annoying. Like if I was interviewing her and she's like, yeah, I've got a book of the clients. I'd be like, great. Like, I'm not going to talk. You name them all and then we'll move on. But instead, she'll name one and he'll be like, and who's that again? And I'm like, dude, just like wait till you get home and Google them. You know what? Why do you need to get her to talk about each one? Just get her. Just let's hear the list. No, now they're on the blackmail stuff, and she starts talking about how she was the interior decorator, and she never saw a single camera. So you have to have. So they're talking about blackmail. You have to have something to say when you go to the intelligence organization. You have to have something to say, hey, look, I've got this video of you doing terrible things and you need to, whatever. So I built those houses, many of them. I decorated those houses. I put the electricians in for the wiring. I never wired nor saw a single house that had any type of inappropriate, let's say, video surveillance. Now, here's the funny thing here. There have been rumors and people have talked about there being cameras in Epstein's massage rooms, bathrooms, bedrooms in his mansions, in all of his properties. There have been rumors about this for years. In his Palm Beach one, we know there were cameras because the police themselves set them up there to help Epstein catch Juan Alessi stealing from him. This was a big thing. Apparently there were things, but Ghislaine Maxwell, who is her fucking story now is, I'm the one, I didn't know anything about this massaging thing that was going on. I wasn't helping with that. I wasn't trained, contrary to what all these women have said, I did not train all these young girls how to properly please Jeffrey Epstein sexually. I didn't do any of that. I was just the interior decorator. And she's like, I was a decorator. I would have seen a camera. Well, this interview was done on July 25th. And on August 5th, New York Times posted a article just 10 days after this interview took place, or 11 days or something.
where we finally have a photograph of a camera. There it is. Look at this. Camera. Caught in 4K. Caught in 4K. There's a camera, and this is in the bedroom. And there's another photo of another camera, too. I wish I had the article so I could be more exact with this. But yeah, anyway. So very funny. Very funny that she said that. Just bad timing. She's like, absolutely not. No camera ever even enter the premises. Immediately after New York Times is like, now we found one. No, yeah, no. It's like very clear. It's not pinhole hidden at all, True Tech. It's right there. It's like sitting there. This part is kind of crazy. They're talking about, Todd Blanche is like, what about photos of all these celebrities and famous people with young girls or videos of them? She's like, don't exist, never seen them. Well, what about just like photos of these underage girls naked? And she's like, oh yeah, no, I've seen those. So right now I'm talking about photographs of victims or photographs of women that Mr. Epstein had on his computer, wherever he had them. Did you know that those photos existed before you got them in Discovery? Ghislaine Maxwell. Oh, some of them absolutely, because they were in his house. Some of these pictures were on his, credenza or whatever. Interesting that she chose not to lie about that, but I guess, would be hard to. And that corroborates this Virginia Giuffre quote from her lawsuit against Maxwell from some point when they were suing each other for defamation. Virginia had said, if you walked foot into Jeffrey Epstein's house and you went in there and you continued to be an acquaintance of his, you would have to know what was going on there. I would say the first time they came to Epstein's home, there's nude pictures everywhere. These are photographs of salacious acts of girls, young girls, doing things to each other that would be considered, I don't think I can say this, I'm just going to say CP. But that was just how he decorated his house. He's a weirdo. Ghislaine makes a case for her own innocence here. Let's see what Ghislaine's case for her own innocence is. I just want to say, for the record, I do believe that Mr. Epstein did a lot of, not all, but some of what he's accused of. I'm not here to defend him in any respect whatsoever. Don't want to, and I don't think he requires nor deserves any type of protection or from me in any way to sugarcoat what he did or didn't do. So there's that. Okay, great. Now, here's the move. Here's the fucking spin. However, the man that I met and the man he became, I believe there is a progression. I don't think that the man I met is the man that he became. I believe he became that man over a period of time. And now we can discuss everything you want, and I'll tell you anything I know, but I think somebody who has an interest, however you define that, in underage people, is obviously somebody who is unwell. David Marcus, her counsel, her lawyer, interrupts her, and she goes, and he's like, kind of like, Ghislaine, before you get into all that, like, he's like, clearly, like, this part that Ghislaine is saying is like something that she's prepared. Something that her and her lawyers have like, here is how you pitch it. You're gonna say, Epstein seemed really chill when you knew him in the 90s, and he only got weird in the 2000s when he stopped hanging out so much. That's what you're gonna say. But she does it at a very weird point. It's not an organic shift. She just suddenly is like, and I just want to state for the record that I think, and then, so he interrupts her here. Ghislaine, before you get into all that, let's answer the top line question and then get into that. And the top line question is, and it's about the people that she's named. Did you ever see any of them with underage women? No, never saw any. No. Did Jeffrey Epstein, so this is interesting. Blanche asks, did Jeffrey Epstein encourage his clients, the people on the list, to share his women/girls? Ghislaine says, yes, but only women these are people who are in their 20s and 30s. I think in the 90s he may have encouraged them. Oh, do you want a massage? I have a masseuse. These are people who are in their 20s and 30s, which we know is not the case. We know people who were Epstein victims who were very young. So he would have a masseuse, right? And he did. Male and female, by the way. In the 90s, that's never been discussed. Both in yoga and everything. There were men as well as women. And apparently she names one of his male masseuses. He would say, would you like to do yoga with Tito? Would you like a massage with this one? So apparently Tito, first I've ever heard of this guy. This guy was apparently a male masseuse for Jeffrey Epstein. Okay. Or a yoga guy, maybe. A yoga instructor for Jeffrey Epstein. Tito. Let's find this guy. Somebody needs to interview Tito, the only male masseuse that Epstein ever hired. So here's another point where fucking Todd Blanche, one of the way Mr. Epstein was successful was through this idea of blackmail. So fun. Like, it almost seems like he's trying to like intimidate her or something. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean Mr. Maxwell. I meant your boyfriend, not your dad. But I think he's just a moron. So Ghislaine Maxwell says, Todd Blanche asks, even women over the age of 18, if Epstein encouraged these men or whomever to get massages and have inappropriate sexual contact with them, that's a separate issue. Maybe slightly nuanced. But did you ever know him to do that? Did you ever see Epstein get some other person to get a erotic massage from one of his masseuses? Maxwell says, no, never did. Absolutely myself. Never heard him ask someone. I never heard that. No one, the entire time I was with him or friends with him or had anyone, no one ever reported to me or came to me and said that anything inappropriate happened or was upset by. I never saw a tear. I never saw any of that. Very this reminds me of the Catholic Church scandal. No, never heard anything. There was no one cried. No one cried. So how could there have been abuse going on? And when you say no one reported to me, you mean like the masseuses? Never. Or any of the house staff? Never. So infuriating. It's crazy because one thing with Virginia Giuffre was that she was really hopeful that she could talk to some of the house staff, like the maid or the chef, and because she was like, we were walking around the house naked. We were children walking around naked, and they saw us. They would have conversations with us naked. They knew what was happening, and all of them are like, no, I never saw any of that. Wow, really? That's crazy. I was just cooking food or whatever. By the way, Jeffrey Epstein's chef, one of them, became a celebrity chef. He became Jimmy Fallon's best friend, and runs all these celebrity chef all these Texas barbecue restaurants. And he talks about where he learned to cook barbecue. I was at a ranch. I was working on a ranch, and I was talking to all these people in the air. And he never mentions it was Jeffrey Epstein, Zorro Ranch. Crazy. But this is the same excuse I've seen everyone fucking says. I didn't see any of it. Really? Wow. It's not believable from anyone, but it's especially not believable from Ghislaine here. She does admit that she found masseuses for Jeffrey Epstein. She does a little stand-up comedy. Well, so he new all the time. He got bored, so he'd be bored with a masseuse, and he'd say, "Find me a new masseuse." I'm the entire opposite. The ladies are different. Men, they will always want a different masseuse. Women, they find someone they like, they stay with them. And it's I don't know. I felt like she was trying to workshop some her type 5 here. Ghislaine says, I never ever, yes, I would recruit masseuses for him. I never ever once checked their age or even checked their credentials. I never asked for a massage certificate. It's yeah, you never asked for a massage certificate because you were recruiting high school girls. And you never checked their age because, again, you were recruiting high school girls. And it was very clear. I found one thing. This is from an affidavit by Detective Riccari. This is one of the detectives who was initially investigating the Palm Beach case in 2000, whatever, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever this happened. One of the girls that he interviewed, and she's quoted in Filthy Rich. Dobbs stated, so it's not her real name, stated she performed the massage naked. At the conclusion of the massage, he paid her $200. After the massage, Epstein stated to Dobbs that he understood she was not comfortable but would pay her if she brought over some girls. He told her the younger, the better. She once brought a 23-year-old female, and Epstein said the female was too old. The only girls that Epstein accepted were from 14 through 16 years of age. So, yeah, there are very, very, clear examples of Epstein just not knowing of, Ghislaine knowing very, very clearly, of Epstein being very clear that he wanted underage girls. That's what he wanted. People would bring, a 20-year-old. He'd be like, who's this grandma? So this is more of Ghislaine's, rewriting of history here. Yeah, honestly, Riccari, fuck the police and stuff. But from what I've read of Detective Riccari, he seems like his heart was in the right place. And he seemed like he was he got so many of these girls. He had Epstein dead to rights. And when he saw the way things were going, he was like, what the fuck? What the fuck is happening? He was horrified that this should have been an open and shut case here. So Todd Blanche asks her, so what did you know at the time about him, Mr. Epstein, requiring masseuses to be naked or requiring masseuses to either perform sexual favors for Mr. Epstein or to be there if Mr. Epstein masturbated or things like that? Ghislaine Maxwell. Okay, so the 90s, I don't think that I ever thought, that would never cross my mind. I'm not sure that I thought about that in those contexts at all until his arrest and those papers came out. But I believe that the subject of the question that you're asking me, I believe started in the 2000s. Okay, so apparently she's saying Epstein only started sexually assaulting these girls in the 2000s. So you see the fucking picture she's trying to paint here. This is well disproven at this point. This is complete fake news here. Honestly, yeah, Julie K. Brown should be the one interviewing Ghislaine. If only that would happen. But of course, she's not a Trump sycophant. So they'll get fucking Laura Liu before they get Julie K. Brown on this one, unfortunately. Like a fucking libs of TikTok or fucking Mike Cernovich. On it, like literally those people are closer to being in the room with Ghislaine at this point. But anyhow, this is just to get back into the topic here. This is again part of Ghislaine's new thing. She doesn't think that she's like, no, he only started doing it in the 2000s. And do you know why? It's one person's fault. So here's the accusation. Somebody earlier, I think it was somebody earlier was asking, does she make any accusations? She does. So here's who she said is to blame for everything bad that Epstein ever did. Here's whose fault it is. I think because in December of 2001, he met, name redacted, but we know who this is. I'll get to it in a second. And I think name redacted was responsible for that in its entirety. This person was responsible for Jeffrey Epstein becoming bad. The reason I believe that, so she was a self-confessed having been sexually abused as a young girl. So like, first of all, what a fucked up way to say that. Like self-confess is like as if that's like a confession. Like doesn't a confession mean like, you've done something bad? Like being a victim of sexual abuse. I don't know. Like the way she says it's self-confessed. It's like she admitted it herself that she was sexually abused as a young girl and was trained, her words I'm quoting now, in all the arts of whatever that is, the sex program by a man called Ron Eppinger. So they bleep out this person's name, but they do not bleep out anybody else involved in her story. Extremely simple to figure out who this is. Who was a pimp from when she was 14, I believe, or 15, I don't know. And then everyone who came subsequent to, or simultaneously, if she wasn't the first, I don't know. Every single person who came to his house, came through, whoever, they bleep out her name, and her boyfriend Tony, and then whoever else underneath her. And that is how it started. So before her, Tony Figuera. Tony Figuera is her, and then actually, this is her fucking lawyer who pipes in with this. Tony Figuera, sorry. I was meaning to say his last name too, because I do want to fuck up his whole life here. So this is, anybody know? I'm sure somebody in here knows, and I think that there's a bit of a delay in the chat, so I won't wait. I'm sure a lot of you guys know who this is. This is Virginia Giuffre. This is the woman without whom we would know almost nothing about Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell. This is a person who sued and was sued by Alan Dershowitz, Prince Andrew, and Ghislaine Maxwell, and who was able to, yes, you call it, Virginia. This person dragged them into court incredibly bravely, fought against all of these elite fucking billionaire royal family like pedophiles, and produced photos and evidence and named names and like went to bat and just constantly like spoke to journalists, did whatever she could to get the message out. This person who passed away by an apparent suicide a few months ago, just recently deceased. This person who Bill Clinton lied about in his book, verifiably lied about in his book. Now, Maxwell is saying that Virginia is this, by the way, at the time she was underage. She was, I forget, 16 or 17 in 2001 when she met Epstein. And apparently it was her bad influence who was like, hey, Epstein, have you ever thought about being a pedophile? I recommend it, and I'm going to help you do it. And me and my boyfriend, Tony, are going to find girls for you to like abuse. This is an insane framing of reality. Absolutely insane. Completely crazy. But like, I don't know, like, I mean, I know like victim blaming is like this sort of thing happens all the time. This is the most unhinged, like crazy version of that I have ever seen, right? This is so nuts. Whose fault was it that Epstein was a pedophile? It was Virginia Giuffre's. That is what she's saying here. Crazy. Sorry, I get a little worked up here. I have a lot of respect for Virginia, and I think this is like fucking unbelievable move. It's not even just like, and you see her lawyers helping her through it, like Leah Safian, and keeping her on track and make sure you mention this. This is part of it too. And it's just like, fuck you. You know what I mean? Yeah, this is it's just so disrespectful. Anyway, I feel bad for her boyfriends too. Her boyfriend, Tony Figuera. This guy's had a rough go of it. He was dating her while she was with Epstein, and he was making money by bringing girls to the thing. And then she left him. She tricked Epstein into giving her a flight to Thailand. And she was supposed to go there to recruit a girl, I think. And she didn't do that. She met a guy, and then he helped her escape to Australia, and they got married. And then the boyfriend heard about that and was like, what? Oh my God, what the heck? You're leaving me? And he never heard from her again. And he's been dragged into this case a few times. And now here he is being named. They didn't bleep out his name. He's right there. So they made sure they got that on the record. Anyway, evil. So we finally get back on track. Todd Blanche is like, who are some other famous politicians? And she's like, oh, yeah. She gets her book out and she starts naming more people. She's adding more people to the list. Who are some other famous politicians, other individuals in Epstein's life during that time period? So from through the 90s, while Ghislaine was there. Okay, Congressman McMillan, who I don't know who that is. I've never heard Congressman McMillan be mentioned alongside Epstein. Henry Rosofsky, who's the provost of Harvard. So she's looking at her book here. It says, sure, you're looking at your notes. Yes, go ahead. So she's got a list. She's reading off of her list. Joe Pagano, Jerry Goldsmith, Joe Roberts, Kenny Lipper, Dan Abramson. But she's listing people here. Tom Pritzker, Ace, that's Ace Greenberg, Jimmy Kane from Bear Stearns, Lou Ranieri. I mean, there were, and again, motherfucking Todd Blanche interrupts. He can't help himself. What about the royal family? So it's like this is where I'm pissed, because then it goes into pages and pages of Todd being like, what about this person? What about this person? What about this person? And I'm like, Todd, she's in the middle of just reading you a list. Just sit back and let her say names. But no, Todd has his own list. He wants to name people for her. Right? Why don't they please, let me scan every page in that book. Why would you interrupt her while she's listing these people? A lot of these people are new to me. I didn't have these people on my list. I'm going to be looking into them. They get off topic for a while. And then Todd actually asks a good question later. Where was it? Later on. He's like, okay, and what about all of these prominent individuals that were in his life? Did any of them stick out in your mind as having received massages? And this would be the massage, people who received massages. This is basically from what we know, from what Virginia Giuffre and others have said, other victims of Epstein have said, this is how they would be trafficked. They'd be like, oh, I'm whatever. Sorry, I just got distracted by something. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So you'd be over at Epstein's house and he'd be like, hey, would you like a massage? Wink, wink, from one of my girls. And they'd be like, yes. And then he'd be like, okay. And they go into a room and he would tell them, treat him, give him the same service you give me. And they would go in, and that is where the abuse would happen. That's how it would go. So this is a good question. Which of these people that you're naming, because we know we're getting the client list. These are the financial clients or whatever fucking scam was going on with that. But how many of them actually got massages? So great question. She starts naming them. Henry Rosofsky, that's the provost of Harvard. Marvin Minsky, Marvin Minsky is fucking, not only is he a likely pedophile, maybe I shouldn't say that. Yeah, I think I can say likely, right? I'm not sure about it, but he got massages from girls at Epstein's house. This dude, Marvin Minsky, this guy is an MIT professor and he's known as the fucking godfather of AI. This guy was writing about fucking AI shit long before our current fucking dystopian dead internet theory world. Marvin Minsky. He sounds like a children's book fucking elf or something. Marvin Minsky. He sounds like he owns a magical fucking chocolate factory. He co-founded the MIT's AI laboratory and wrote extensively about AI and philosophy. He won the Turing Award in 1969. This guy has been, and he's a Zionist activist. So just not a lot of good things to say about this dude. Oh, he was an advisor on 2001: A Space Odyssey. And one of the movie's characters, Victor Kaminsky, doesn't really sound like his name, but Minsky, I guess, named in his honor. So yeah, this guy's been a big deal. He received a $10,000 research grant from Epstein in 2002, 4 years before his first arrest for sex offenses, which lines up with Ghislaine's timeline here. He organized 2 academic symposia on Little St. James, Epstein's private island. One in 2002, that was while Ghislaine was around, and another in 2011. Virginia Giuffre, so this is why I already had Minsky on my list, on my personal list, is because Virginia had accused him that Ghislaine Maxwell, apparently, had directed her to have sex with Minsky, among others. Yeah, isn't that something? This guy, Marvin Minsky. You shouldn't be able to have that mischievous or that whimsical of a name and be somebody like that. So who got massages? So she names 2 people who gets massages. And then Todd again interrupts her and does the same move where he's like, she's naming people. Henry Rosofsky, Minsky, say that again. Minsky was another person. Do you know whether, for example, President Clinton ever received a massage? And I'm like, bro, let the woman speak. Stop speaking over women, okay? We need to listen to women, okay? Let women talk. Don't speak over them, all right? This is This is 2025, all right? This is a feminist moment. We need to really stop interrupting. Stop putting words in her mouth. And, but yeah, no, of course. Like, this is like, it's so obvious what he's doing here, right? Do you know, for example, whether President Clinton ever received a massage? And Ghislaine's like, no, I don't believe he did. And it's like, bro, quit. Hey, quit it. Stop that. Yeah, you better stop with all this naming stuff. Exactly. This is like, he would much prefer that he be the one to give her names and then she say yes or no than just to hear what her fucking list is. And she's got it right in front of her. Oh my God, I'm so annoyed. But no, so then he just starts naming people. And it is kind of funny because he names Bill Clinton, which, okay, obviously you can tell what's happening there. She says no, even though we have a photo of Bill Clinton getting a massage from Shantae Davis, one of Epstein's victims, at an airport. So, dude, like, Ghislaine, you can't lie about that. This is the part about Donald J. Trump. So hopefully I can get through this section because this is important. Obviously, I think we all know the entire purpose of this interview is to make Donald Trump look good. And I think you know that, and I think I know that, and I think Todd Blanche obviously knows that. But more than anything, Ghislaine Maxwell knows that. Ghislaine Maxwell knows her only fucking job here is to not say anything bad about Trump. So here is where we get into Donald Trump. What did you observe as far as President Trump and his relationship with you or Mr. Epstein? Well, I just want to say my relationship with President Trump, relationship's a big word. Again, she has like a weird complex about the word relationship. I just want to say that I met him, I believe I may have because my father in the 90s. So she's going over this again. She mentioned this at the very beginning of the interview, but yep, okay. So my father liked him very much and he was loved, really liked his wife as well because they were both Czechoslovakian. As far as I'm concerned, President Trump was always very cordial and very kind to me. And I just want to say that I admire his extraordinary achievement in becoming the president now. And I like him. I've always liked him. So that is the sum and substance of my entire relationship with him. So I saw some tweet where it was like, okay, here's Trump's new character witness, Ghislaine Maxwell. She's like, I admire his extraordinary achievement in becoming the president, and I like him. I've always liked him. If you guys listened to the stuff about that Michael Wolff posted, his interviews with Jeffrey Epstein, and Epstein talks about how he was Trump's best friend for 15 years, from like approximately 1987 to about 2004. They were like very, very good friends, hung out all the time. And like Epstein describes Trump, he's like, oh, Trump's an idiot. Trump is so stupid, but he's so funny. He's a great guy to hang out with. So funny, so stupid, doesn't know anything about science or history or anything. He's so ignorant, so uneducated, like just a fucking buffoon, but very funny. And and you know, again, Epstein, another guy you should not trust at all. Like I've been saying, the guy's a compulsive liar. But doesn't that seem true? Doesn't that ring true though? Doesn't that seem true? Like for Epstein to hang out with Trump, like I feel like that would be the dynamic, right? And I think that Ghislaine had felt sort of the same way, where she's like, "Oh, he's hilarious, but he's a fucking idiot." And when she says, "I admire his extraordinary achievement in becoming the president now. I like him. I've always liked him." It's like for her, she's like, "I never thought he'd be able to do it." That's sort of how I read that. I don't know. Maybe I'm projecting my own things, but I do think that's what she thinks, and I do think that she would have probably voted for Hillary Clinton over Trump. Maxwell loves Hillary Clinton. Maxwell loved the Clintons. Epstein too, obviously. I think she would have preferred Hillary Clinton over Trump. That's just what's in my heart. There's a thing where she met the guy from 60 Minutes. What the heck was his name? 60 Minutes guy. Is it worth looking this up? Probably not. Anyway, well, there's a moment right before the election where she's like, well, obviously once Hillary wins, blah, blah, blah. So she did not expect Trump to win. None of us did, to be fair. I didn't. Some people did, but I didn't. Anyway, so just glazing him. And what about Mr. Epstein's relationship with Trump? I don't know how they met, and I don't know how they became friends. Certainly saw them together. I remember the few times I observed them together, but they were friendly. I mean, they seemed friendly. Was that in social settings or was that in private settings? I believe I only ever saw them in social settings. I don't recall any private settings. And that is also a lie. They definitely hung out privately many times, but a lot of the photos of Trump and Epstein are at parties and shit, right? So she's trying to do whatever she can to separate the two people. I think that's like very clearly what she's doing. And then Todd, did you ever observe President Trump receive a massage? And she gives the correct answer, which is never. Correct as in that is what she's supposed to do. That is the point of this interview. Now, I will say, Juan Alessi, who was generally pretty, as far as I can tell, seems pretty honest in during his testimony. Juan Alessi was asked about Trump.
Now, Mr. Trump had a home in Palm Beach, correct? Uh-huh. So he didn't come and stay there, did he? No, never. He would come for a meal. He would come have dinner. He never sat at the table. He ate with me in the kitchen. Did he ever have massages while he was there? No, because he's got his own spa. Sorry if that accent is not as good as my British accent. So he also said that Trump never got a massage. And he would talk about, and Juan Alessi talked about like how he would go in after a massage and have to like clean off dildos and stuff. Like he talks, this guy is, his testimony is valuable. It's a valuable piece of documentary evidence. But it's just interesting that it lines up because, and this is an interesting line here. Did he ever have massages while he was there? No, because he's got his own spa. A lot of people take that to be like, massage is a euphemism for abuse. Did he ever have massages? He doesn't need to because he's got his own spa being a euphemism for harem. What do you call it? What do you call that thing? Whatever it is that Epstein had. He had his own version of it, which is interesting because I think that is kind of true. Like Trump owned a modeling agency that he was really fucked up about. You know, that's how he started dating Melania. Was first he made her a model and then whatever. Epstein based his modeling agency on Trump's modeling agency. Like, you know, so he's got his own spa. It's interesting. I don't know. I don't know if I fully buy that. That's what Juan Alessi intended there, but it's an interesting read. This part is a full-on lie. Do you have a recollection of ever recruiting a masseuse from Mar-a-Lago Spa to give a private massage to Mr. Epstein? And Ghislaine said, I've never recruited a masseuse from Mar-a-Lago for that. As far as I remember, I can't recollect doing that. And that is not true. So this is crazy because this is where she recruited Virginia. She recruited Virginia Giuffre there. I've never recruited a masseuse from Mar-a-Lago for that. As far as I remember, I can't ever recollect doing that. Oh, okay. So you would think this would be a point where Todd would be like, what about Virginia Giuffre? The person who you say was the evil temptress to Epstein. What about her? But instead, he doesn't do that. He's like, okay, so what I think we should do now, it's about 12:15. We'll take a break. And we'll come back in a little bit. Maxwell. Okay. And then they break for lunch. And then when they come back, they do not keep talking about that. Like Todd Blanche, at parts of this, I think he's acting maliciously. He's acting to protect a pedophile. And there's just parts of it I think he's just kind of dumb. She said that she never saw anyone have sex on the Lolita Express, or actually maybe she did. She can't quite remember. He would get foot massages and shoulder massages all the time on the Lolita Express, but maybe not on a massage table. This part I thought was crazy. So this is, again, the way that Ghislaine is trying to shape Ghislaine's insane spin. How Ghislaine thinks that everything happened here. So she thinks that Epstein used to be nice in the 90s, and then in 2001, when he met Virginia, she made him evil. I know we're talking about a decade-long period, but during the period we're talking about, a 7-day week, how often would Epstein get a massage? In the 90s, when we're talking, he would get one every day. I think as that time progressed, he'd get one, maybe twice a day. And this doesn't match with testimony. It seems that he was getting like 3 every day, 3 erotic massages a day. I do want to say that there was maybe a reason that things altered or morphed or progressed. It is maybe part of the reason also that I'll do the accent. He and our relationship, or somebody wants to call it, altered. He started doing testosterone, and that altered his character. And I believe he started in the late 90s. I believe the FBI has his medical records, and you may see that on his medical records. So that is why he became a pedophile. He started doing testosterone in the 90s. Todd Blanche. So you believe that he started taking testosterone in the 90s, and when you say he altered his behavior, you're saying it made him get more massages? Or was that just one part of what changed about him? Well, he became more aggressive. I see. And I think he maybe, now I'm just imagining that the testosterone altered his desires or something. And it's like, dude, what? So, and then she says, in 96, 97, 98, that is when Ghislaine first began to suspect that she was not the only person that Epstein was having sex with. Was that when you said he changed? Did you flat out know that he was having sex or otherwise some sort of sexual conduct with sisters regularly? Flat out? No, I denied that. I couldn't imagine that he would, but I think looking back now that I did not. But I started to suspect that he was not faithful. Seems ludicrous, but that's what I thought. Anyways, guys, we made it. This is actually about halfway through day 1. So we're gonna stop here for today. I'm gonna get to the rest. We're gonna continue on, and there is a whole other day that we haven't even started.